Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. If someone says to you, "Are you biased?" I mean, what do you say? Yeah, I'm biased against everything. No, of course not. Right? Dr. Arin Reeves is a best-selling author of One Size Never Fits All, Business Development Strategies Tailored for Women and Most Men, and president of Nextions, a research and advisory firm working with Fortune 500 companies. And wanted to get into that whole idea of bias this morning, maybe some unconscious bias out there. And Dr. Arin Reeves joins us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Dr. Reeves, an honor to have you with us. Good morning to you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, it's an interesting topic because we've been talking a lot about biases, especially over the last year, and we get into, how people feel about race, but that's the obvious one. But there are other biases. You get into the workplace and so forth. And tell me a little bit about this whole bias thing and how you kind of got onto it.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think one, you sort of started off saying, and if someone asks you if you're biased, every single person on this planet's answer should be, of course I am. It is, seriously, biases basically mean that your brain takes shortcuts. That's it, right? A bias is a shortcut that your brain is taking to make a decision faster than having to really think about it. So when we take shortcuts, we depend on a lot of stuff that happens in society for those images, right? So, for example, if I said to you, I was, walking down the street and this kid had music playing really, really loud, you wouldn't hear classical music in your head. You would hear, heavy metal or rap or hip-hop or something because that's usually what we hear. So there's... It's just a shortcut that we're taking, and in the workplace, the reason it becomes an issue is sometimes when we take shortcuts, we can influence people's careers by assuming things that may not be true about them. And so what we want to do is make people aware that we have biases and that sometimes we need to teach our brain to not rely on biases for decisions, but to rely on more conscious thinking for decisions.
Well, let me come back to your example you gave there. So I see the kid coming down the street, and maybe he's listening to music or she's listening to music, and it's this loud music or whatever, and I assume that it's probably like the kind of where I can hear the bass tweeters going by my house at night on my street, right? But then most of the time, don't we take that bias a little further where we now assume what kind of person that person might be, not just their music habits? In other words, now we say, well, I bet you that person is this, and this. And that's where, to me, biases then tend to get to be really where we get into a stereotype kind of thing that gets to be really kind of negative, right?
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that we have found, for example, is if you see someone with a tattoo, right? If you see someone with a tattoo on their arm, or you see someone with a tattoo, somewhere that's very visible in the workplace, there are studies now that show that supervisors don't trust them as much. Yeah. They don't think they're that smart. One interesting bias, right, which just shows how our brain works, when we see someone in a wheelchair, we talk very loudly to them. Like that one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other. But we assume this person has disabilities in so many different ways instead of our brain saying, hey, you know what? They have a disability in their legs or something, but not their ears. Like they hear perfectly fine. So we do assume a whole bunch of other stuff based on what the bias triggers. And we want to be, especially as supervisors and leaders, we want to be very careful of what that has led us to assume about people so that we really understand who are we giving a fair shot to, who are we not giving a fair shot to. Also, who maybe we, are we giving a unfair advantage to some people? Are we giving, are we assuming someone's going to be really good because of something?
Right.
So biases can be positive as well. There are positive assumptions around certain people and negative assumptions around others.
That's a great point. And I think that, one of the things that you want certain things to be true. You see someone come in who maybe fits your vision of what you want. You want it to be true. And we tend to make false assumptions based on the positive look at it, too. I know I was in a position where I helped to hire somebody one time, and I thought, this person will be great. They hit all the things that I wanted. And then I assumed some other things, and I had a bias toward that look. And then all of a sudden, they were a failure. They were terrible. And so you're exactly right on that. The one thing that we do have to understand, though, I think, and I know you write about this in your books, is the fact that biases do make us human. So if I'm a person who's an employer, and you come in to get a job from me, One of the things that I'm governed by now to kind of hold my biases at bay are regulations and laws, because we have many more laws and regulations in the book to deal with bias than maybe we ever had before. But point being, is there anything wrong with me saying, by the way, here are some of my biases, and I got to tell you right now, I'm sure you probably can't say this because they get you for whatever with the law. I don't like the tattoos you have on your arm. I don't like the fact that you're wearing a big beard right now when you come in here to apply for a job with me. Now, you've got to tell me why you're a better person than that, or you're qualified, even though you don't hit my stereotype of what I'd like to see.
I think that's a great point. A lot of times we want people in the workplace that make us feel comfortable, right?
Yes.
And I think that as employers and leaders, the question is, what is it about this thing that I don't like in people that could affect the way that they work? And if the answer is nothing, I just don't like it, then you have to ask yourself, are you really willing to compromise on amazing talent that's out there just to be more comfortable?
Right.
And as a leader, I hope your answer is no, because the good of the organization, the good of whoever it is that you're serving should come before your comfort level. So if someone says, I'm uncomfortable when someone has a lot of tattoos, then the question is, okay, well, do tattoos prevent them from being the best, whatever it is? If not, get over it.
On the other hand, though, if you come into a situation and let's say you're a service-oriented business, and that person's going to be out there representing your company in front of you. Maybe it's a restaurant, let's say. And someone gets, there are people come in and maybe get a little unnerved by a lot of tattoos or a lot of piercings or whatever on a person serving them. You're now in a different situation where it's going to hit the bottom line of your business. It's not about bias. It's about maybe the fact that people that come to buy at your business maybe have a bias there, and that's not something you could necessarily control, right?
It's not something you can control, and now you are talking about a business decision, right?
Right,
Which is different
exactly.
than for example, when lawyers go into a courtroom and have to convince a jury of something,
right.
Yes, it really matters what the jury is going to think of you, because you're trying to influence them to rule with you as opposed to the other side. And if you know that juries have, biases against tattoos, cover them up,
yep.
right, when you're in a courtroom. So I think that there are biases and comfort zone type preferences that have nothing to do with business. Then you kind of get into some gray area where it may have something to do with business, but you're not really sure. And then there's some very concrete, this has to do with business. And I think as a leader, because you want to get the best talent that's out there, and biases
right.
sometimes can prevent you from doing that, you just got to ask yourself, what are we accomplishing with this particular preference? And if we're actually keeping talent away as opposed to getting talent in the door, then, we need to put it on the table and say, hey, we actually might need to get comfortable with this, or recognize how it's influencing the way we think about talent.
So get by the wrapper and look at what's inside.
Exactly.
Yeah, my wife got a great email the other day from a friend, and the friend said, I think it was on Facebook, and the friend said, they were driving on a trip, and they went through this place, and they said, oh my God, look at this place. This is horrible. This is, they're going out west or something. All of a sudden, the car breaks down. And they're stuck in this place. I mean, right after this lady said this, the car breaks down, right? And they said, "Oh, we're stuck. Oh my gosh, our lives are in danger." In the space of 5 minutes, 3 people come out to help them and got them on their way. So there's a great example of the biases, not in an employment situation, but translating to something else. I want to come back and talk to you more about this and how it manifests itself in the office, and what's the way to changing the way we automatically think or judge, because we all kind of do it. I mean, we all we're in a moment and we see something, we say, oh, geez, that must be. And then you fight yourself. Maybe not. We'll come back more with Dr. Arin Reeves right here on the Gary Sutton Show about biases on News Radio 910 WSBA. We all do it. We see something and we say, oh, geez, yeah. Maybe it's tattoos. Maybe it's the way someone looks. Remember the song about hair? Who was it, the Cal Stills that sang about hair? Dr. Arin Reeves with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. She is a best-selling author of the One Size Never Fits All. Business development strategies tailored for women and most men. And she's also the president of Nextions, back with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. So how do we see this kind of manifest itself in the workplace a lot, Dr. Reeves?
wherever, I mean, there was a great example a few years ago where orchestra conductors, they said, look, music is music. We're not biased, but they weren't hiring any women. And the judge asked them to do blind interviews. So basically there was a screen. They couldn't see who was performing on the other side, and they were asked to make selections. And the selections of women went up 3 times, right? So the way it works is based on who we see in front of us, we actually may be hearing things or seeing the work that they do a little differently. So in the workplace, anytime you can add a veneer of like blind grading or objectivity to it and take subjectivity out of it, then what you do is you prevent the bias from being triggered.
One of the places that you hear bias sometimes, you hear the word bitchy or you hear the word catty, and you don't hear that about guys. Guys don't get that. So there's a little double standard, too, in the workplace. We hear those kind of words sometimes, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, bossy is another one. Like, you don't say a man is bossy, but for the same behavior, you say that a woman is bossy or she's difficult. There was actually a study done that looked at how many times the word difficult was used in evaluations of men, and it was almost never. But the higher up a woman got in any organization, the number of times she was called difficult increased dramatically. And it is. If you stand up in a meeting and you say, I don't agree with that, as a man, you're seen as strong and assertive and a leader. And as a woman, you're seen as, a whole bunch of stuff we can't say on the radio. So So part of it is, and again, it's not conscious. It's not someone saying, I don't like women, or I don't think, I'm not respecting
There's not a
women.
War on women right here on that, right? Yeah,
It's not. And a lot of times when men are made aware of these biases, they are more conscious of it, and it doesn't happen as much. So this is not, and by the way, a lot of women have the same biases about women.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. Are women biased toward other women? And in fact, are minorities biased toward other minorities?
Absolutely. I mean, if you remember way back, right, the doll study in Brown versus Board of Education, it was you ask black children and white children, you give them a black doll and a white doll and say, which doll is smarter, which doll is kinder, which doll do you think will be more successful? The black children were as likely to say the white doll was all the positive things as the white children were, and they're still as likely to do that today. Like even today, the study was done in 2004, and black children will still say that the white doll is going to be more successful. It's smarter, and it's going to be richer, and all these positive characteristics. So even if you're in the group against whom the bias is directed, you still internalize a lot of that bias. That's why biases aren't this part of the brain that's like corrupt where we need to go in and extract it. It's these shortcuts that we take based on what we see around us, and we all have it, right? It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just
there.
So
what do we do
about it? We can be smarter things.
About 2.5 minutes left here. I wanted to get your thoughts on what's the key then to changing the way we automatically think or judge. Because I have biases, and I kind of recognize it when I do it. But I'll say, for example, okay, this person looks like this, but I wonder what's underneath. I've started to ask myself that question as the very next question. I wonder what's underneath. I wonder who this person is. I wonder, and I found a lot of people to be very, very nice people, 99% of the time. So how do we change the way we automatically think or kind of reacted that way? About a minute left.
Okay. Our brain likes 3 things. It likes things that are easy, comfortable, and predictable.
Amen.
A lot of our biases are based on how it used to be because we want things to be predictable, comfortable, and easy. And I think one of the ways that we can start dealing with biases is saying it's okay to be a little uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's okay if something's not predictable. It's okay if something's a little difficult. It's harder to make evaluations about somebody if you're not using your biases. It's more unpredictable to hire somebody if you're not using your biases. And we have to get comfortable with that. And the other thing is just ask yourself why, like 10 times, right? Say, I think this person's a good candidate. Why? Well, because they went to such and such a school. Well, why is that important? And you keep asking why. And what the word why does, the question why, is it gets you through your thought process until you arrive at I have no idea why I think this, right? Like it usually takes about 10 whys down. And there you say, okay, what am I looking for? And you kind of reconstruct the thought process. That's a really easy way to get you to think about biases and where they break down as well.
It's a great way to start. Don't forget to check out the book, One Size Never Fits All, Business Development Strategies Tailored for Men and Most Women. And the author, Dr. Arin Reeves, A-R-I-N Reeves. You can also go to her website at www.nextions, Nextions.com. Dr. Reeves, a fascinating discussion, and I hope we could all benefit a little bit by that as we kind of look beneath just the wrapper. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on the Gary Sutton Show.
My pleasure. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks again. Dr. Arin Reeves with us here on WSBA.